G'day you gorgeous human and welcome back to Politics Made OK. It was the first week of the final sitting fortnight and I gotta tell you, my ears are still ringing. So much yelling.
Loud noises!
Sorry about that, Hawkie. Yep, politicians were all kinds of mad about these vaccine mandates and they let us hear all about it. So who's causing the biggest ruckus? And why has this brought Parliament to a standstill? I'll explain all of that and of course bring you the week that was in 60 seconds on this week's show of PMO. Maybe you need some earmuffs, Hawkie. Or just... Now, it doesn't take someone who's been working in the press gallery for 2 years to tell you that politicians are a pretty shouty bunch.
It was those opposite, outside the Parliament, who changed their position.
The government will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man.
You're not in charge of this place. You're not in charge of this place.
I'm asking you to return to the question.
Happy to do that, Mr. Speaker.
I don't care whether you're happy or not.
Okay.
You're not fit to represent your constituents, and you're not fit to call yourselves men.
But I gotta let you know, this week it was something else. And that's because of something really contentious that politicians are not seeing eye to eye on. I'm talking, of course, of mandates for people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And it's not just politicians getting arced up about this, it's people across the country. Prepare for more shouting.
You are the liar. You are the manipulator.
It is exactly like Nazi Germany.
As you can see, there are a few thousand people across Australia who are really not happy about being forced to get the COVID-19 jab. While the federal government this year stepped in to put mandates on high-risk sectors like healthcare, the states, they've taken it a bit further in the last few months. That's right, 3/4 of WA's whole workforce have to get the jab if they want to keep their jobs. But it's not the only state to put in strong vaccine rules and mandates. For instance, Victorians who aren't vaccinated can't go to non-essential shopping venues. Hell, good luck with the Christmas season. And unvaccinated Queenslanders are also being banned from a whole lot of venues from next month. And this has all resulted not just in those protests on the street, but in protests in Parliament. And by that I mean people from within the coalition demanding their government step in and force states to back out of these mandates. In protest, some of the MPs and senators voted against the government on some laws. Now, when people vote against their party on laws, it's called crossing the floor. And it was a bit of a joke how many people did that this week. You know how that joke goes. Why did the politician cross the floor? Because they were ideologically opposed to mandates and were grandstanding for attention. Yep, what a punchline. Now this all started when One Nation leader Pauline Hanson proposed a law to stop discrimination on people based on their vaccination status. Yep, that's right, One Nation, demanding an end to discrimination. Yeah, I was not the only one who saw that irony. Here's independent Jacqui Lambie slamming the bill.
One Nation wants autistic children to be taken out of public schools because, and I quote, they're a strain. One Nation wants a ban on any immigration from majority Muslim countries. One Nation is opposed to same-sex marriage. People don't choose to be gay. That is discrimination.
And remember how I was talking about politicians getting really shouty before?
Being held accountable for your own actions isn't called discrimination. It's called being, you wouldn't believe it, a goddamn bloody adult.
But despite such fiery speeches in opposition to this law, people from within the government still voted for it, including National Senators Matt Canavan and Sam McMahon, and Liberals Alex Antic and Gerard Rennick. Rennick has made probably the biggest deal this week on how he's not going to vote on government laws unless these mandates are tossed out. Now remember, the government doesn't have a majority in the Senate. They've just got 36 of the 76 seats. So they really do need all the votes they can get. Luckily, they have a majority in the House. So there was no problems there this week, right? Right? Wrong! This guy, George Christensen, is a coalition MP who sits in the House and has also voiced his views against these mandates. And controversially, he said this.
The solution is a rediscovery of human dignity along with, and I don't say this lightly, civil disobedience.
Translation, get out there and protest. You gotta feel sorry for the new Speaker of the House. That's the guy who sits in the chair above everyone and kind of presides over debate. Andrew Wallace just took up the job, and funnily enough, he's a failed priest. Yeah, the guy was willing to become disciplined and celibate at 19 and then went into politics. And now he's presiding over a group who I wouldn't call angels. Besides inciting what haven't been totally peaceful riots, George Christensen also presents another danger. And that is, of course, the government's loss of the majority. The government has just 76 of 150 seats in the House. If everyone else in the House, the Labor, the Greens, the Independents, all vote against the government on something, that still only comes to 75 votes. And so the government still has that holy majority. But if it loses the support of just one member, it doesn't have that luxury of just pushing through laws. So yeah, all these rogue coalition members are causing the government about as much trouble as that water bottle that no one on the front bench was able to open this week. Right, there's Joshy. Yep, going for the water bottle, where he goes. Ready to drink. Oh, having a bit of trouble. Having a lot of trouble. He's really struggling. There other hand. Oh, he knows he's lost it now, doesn't he? Nah, he can't do it. The Treasurer can't do it at all. And he's given it to the Deputy Prime Minister. Yep. Barnaby's given it a crack. Oh. The Beetroot's not even able to do it himself. I love the shot of the open water bottle for Helen Haynes. And Barnaby's got it. And that was one of the biggest achievements of the government this week. Now, the issue of these rogue MPs holding up laws might seem like a very specific matter for just this week. But what you're witnessing is a glimpse of a potential future. The government is at serious risk of losing a bunch of seats, a lot of them in WA and Queensland. And if it does, that will mean one of two things. One, Labor wins the election. And two, that the government wins, but by such a fine line that it finds itself in a hung parliament. A hung parliament is just as grim as it sounds. It basically refers to a parliament in which no political party has the overall majority. And that would mean it would take a whole lot more effort to pass any legislation in the House. More deals would need to be done with crossbenchers or independents, and that would just mean a slower overall process and an angrier overall Sarah. So zooming back to the present, will the government pass any legislation this week? Probably. The government is negotiating and working to appease these MPs and senators who are so mad about the mandates. One way they've done that is to change the indemnity scheme for people who suffer side effects from the COVID jab. Under the previous laws, people who suffer adverse effects and incur costs of over $5,000 because of that, well, they can claim money from the government. But thanks to pressure from our favourite rogue MP, that threshold has been dropped to $1,000. So the government will probably pass the legislation it wants to, eventually. And it's pretty keen to do that, because one of those pieces of legislation has to do with preventing discrimination against people of religion. And while we might not know what Scott Morrison stands for, we do know this.
I have always believed in miracles.
That's right, the man has made no secret of being a believer. And just like that, we've reached the part of the show where I run down everything else that's happened this week in 60 seconds. Hallelujah. And it all starts now. Australia is opening back up to international students and migrants after years of saying no deal because of COVID-19. Labor spent like the whole week calling the PM a liar, and we're all sitting here wondering what's new. Penny Wong has called out Peter Dutton for amping up the possibility of conflict with China, which really pissed off Dutts, who said that Labor was being weak on national security in return. The United Australia Party is joining with equally as right-wing party the Liberal Democrats in a preference deal for the next election. Labor says if it gets into government at the next election, it's going to make domestic violence a priority and invest hundreds of millions of dollars into fixing the issue. One Nation senators Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Robert both aren't vaccinated and so couldn't come to Parliament this week or vote on laws even remotely. And religious discrimination laws are still going to be debated next week, with plenty of debate on how much to water it down and how to protect gay teachers and students from being kicked out of religious schools. So there you have it. The week in 60 seconds, an explainer of the vaccine mandates, and of course enough yelling to keep our ears ringing for weeks to come. Sorry again, mate. If you enjoyed the show, let your mates know about it, share it, maybe leave me a comment about what you liked about it, or maybe what you'd like a future episode to cover. I've also got plenty of yarns I'm writing every single week about federal politics, which you can read right here. So join me next week for the final sitting fortnight of the entire parliamentary year, and I'll catch you next time on PMO.